settle down now for today's cookery lesson. Less than 6 weeks to go to Christmas, but what do you eat on the big day if you're a vegetarian like Anthea?
Yeah, and here's Jane Asher with a few suggestions in the 12 days of Christmas.
The 12 days of Christmas with Sainsbury's. Everything you could want for Christmas Day.
With vegetarianism on the increase, most of us know at least one vegetarian, so it's a good idea at this time of year to try and have a couple of recipes up your sleeve to suit them. Either of these I'm going to show you today make a lovely centrepiece on the Christmas table, or indeed lovely for the rest of us after Christmas when we're a bit sick of leftover turkey. But let's start with this wonderfully colourful vegetable terrine in 3 layers of celery, carrot and spinach. You can see already how beautiful the colours are. Start by chopping up the celery and softening it in a bit of butter for 3 or 4 minutes over a medium heat until you think it's ready to blend. Put it into a blender with the cream cheese and the egg, and then whiz it up until it's nice and smooth. While that's blending, I'll show you I've done exactly the same thing with the carrot, also with the egg and the cheese, and with the spinach. This is looking pretty good. I'll just turn it up a bit for a final whiz. There we are. And now she'll take it out of the blender and put it into a lightly oiled loaf tin. I find it easiest to spread the oil around with a bit of kitchen paper so that it's very evenly oiled and without too much of it. Put that in the tin. Of course, it's the egg that's going to make this set, so it won't stay as liquid as this. And then the next layer, after you smooth that down a bit, the next layer is the spinach, also, as I say, pre-blended with the cream cheese and the egg. Smooth that down so that you don't get any gaps around the edges, because this is going to cook into 3 beautiful separate layers of colour. And finally, I'm just going to wipe my spoon, because I don't want to get spinach in the carrot and spoil the colours. Finally, the carrot mixture right on the top. And spread that over. Have your oven preheated, and then we're going to cover this with a bit of kitchen foil, which you could also just lightly oil to make sure it doesn't stick to the top of the terrine, like so. Cook it in the oven for about an hour. When it's cooked, you need to let it chill very thoroughly in the fridge, either overnight or 6 or 7 hours or so, and then run a knife just around the edge of the top of the tin and turn it out very carefully onto a large serving plate. And I've surrounded mine with a tomato coulis, which sounds very grand, but it's terribly easy to make. It's just a big bottle of that passata, which is the Italian tomatoes already mushed up for you, cooked for about 5 or 10 minutes with some garlic and white wine. And you see how lovely the contrast is if you just pour it round the terrine, and then perhaps finally just decorate it with a little sprig of basil like that. And it really does look magnificent, doesn't it? Now a vegetable puff pastry pie. I've started by making a classic white sauce here with a roux of butter and flour, which I've cooked for a little while so it doesn't have any taste of raw flour, and then added the milk bit by bit, whisking and stirring all the time until it thickens up beautifully, like this one has. And then I've added to it some cheddar cheese, a pinch of dry mustard and some parsley, and then a selection of vegetables. Now obviously you can use whichever ones are your favourites, but I've put in some blanched leeks, carrots, broccoli florets and a few sautéed mushrooms. And then I've stirred it all well together, a bit of seasoning as you like, and then I shall turn it into a pie dish like this. I'm going to use frozen puff pastry, because I'm a great believer in cutting corners when it's just as good, and frozen puff pastry is of such a high standard. I think once you've made puff pastry a couple of times, it's a bit like using a calculator. Once you know the principle, then you might as well go for the shortcut. Smooth that down, and now we're ready to cover it. Then once you've rolled out the pastry, again, just slip it over the top of the pie. Again, damp down the little edge so that it sticks. And then there are lots of different ways of finishing off the edge of the pie. My mother always used to do it with the back of a fork. What I quite like to do is just squeeze it with my fingers like that. So it makes quite a pretty sort of fluted edge like this. Work your way round, and with the trimmings that you had left over after you rolled out the pastry, roll them out again and choose some cutters. And obviously for this series we're very Christmassy, so I've chosen a holly leaf cutter, but you could really cut out any shapes you like. And then add those to the top of the pie. Again, we'll just dampen the surface a bit. Don't forget to make a couple little holes for the steam to come out, and then just decorate it with as many leaves as you like. I always tend to go over the top on these things, but then I love things looking exciting, as you know. When you've got it as decorated as you like, just glaze it with a little beaten egg, and then when it comes out of the oven, it'll have a glorious, golden, crispy, shiny finish, which looks quite magnificent. So now all you need to do is pop that in the oven for about 30 minutes. So you see how beautiful it looks once it's cooked. And either of these would be delicious to eat, whether you're vegetarian or not. I'll see you later in the week.
Just put you in the Christmas mood, and due to the huge success of the series, we have had to unfortunately close the free phone line. If you have already phoned for your copy of Jane's cookery booklet, don't worry, you should receive that by the end of the month. And details of today's recipes, they can be found on teletext if you have that, on page 642, and we'll be telling you how you can get hold of one of the 12 Days of Christmas booklets at the end of the week. We should have an update for you on that by Friday.